So good morning, everyone, and thank you for calling in today. The Northwest Territories reached a major milestone last week when we entered into the first phase of relaxed public health restrictions on Friday. Phase 1 is the first step towards gradually relaxing the public health restrictions that have kept the Northwest Territories safe from COVID-19 so far. Phase 1 allows people to visit each other in their homes and have larger outdoor gatherings. It will also allow some businesses that had been closed to reopen. Phase 1 doesn't mean the threat of COVID-19 is over. So people will still have to follow public health advice to limit the number of people they are in contact with and maintain physical distance when they're visiting others. While schools are allowed to reopen with appropriate risk assessments and arrangements to protect the health of students and staff under Phase 1, they are not required to. The decision to ultimately is up to every education authority, and last week, in a meeting with Minister Simpson, superintendents agreed to focus their efforts on reopening safely in the fall, rather than trying to do it so close to the end of the school year. Access to personal protective equipment is going to be an important part of how the N.W.T. emerges wisely from the restrictions of the containment phase. To ensure that the N.W.T. governments are able to continue providing services as we emerge from restrictions, the GNWT has been working to secure and distribute supplies of PPE to community governments, Indigenous governments, NGOs, and its own departments. We're also encouraging N.W.T. manufacturers and businesses to produce PPE and non-medical masks to meet N.W.T. needs here at home. The COVID-19 pandemic hit the N.W.T. and the world quickly, and our government has had to move fast to protect the health of residents. We know that the measures we had to put in place had a significant economic and financial impact for businesses and individuals in the North. Our government has taken steps throughout the pandemic to lessen the impact by providing financial assistance where we could and suspending many of our normal revenue collection activities. While these steps have helped minimize the impact, there's no substitute for being able to restart the N.W.T. economy. Phase 1 and the path charted by Emerging Wisely marks the first steps towards restarting our economy and our social and economic recovery. I will now open the floor to questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Premier Cochrane. So as I said earlier, I have my list of RCP media here. Thank you again for doing that. It's always helpful. I know we've got lots of people watching from home as well, so it just helps us to kind of facilitate this nice and smoothly for them. So I'm going to just open up the floor right away to CBC, and we'll turn it over to Hillary first for some questions.
This is Sidney. Actually, I think Hillary's having some technical difficulties, so I'll just ask on her behalf if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, yeah, so we were wondering about businesses reopening. Like, do they need green light from WSCC to open, and or do they need any government official to kind of go over their risk assessment plan, or do they just need to have the plan?
So right now, what has been asked of businesses that are allowed to open up in Phase 1 is that they have a risk assessment plan. They do need to file it with WSCC. WSCC is there to help them fill out the forms if necessary to actually guide them through the process. So right at this point, we're not determining that the risk assessments have to be approved. They have to have them in place. They have to have them posted in their businesses. And therefore, if an inspector does show up, that they would be, they would have to abide by their risk assessment and their plans going forward.
Okay, great. And just as a follow-up to that, so just to clarify, that means that any business that sort of self-determines that they can reopen under Phase 1 can actually just do that right now, as long as they have this form filled out and posted in their window or posted in their business or something like that. Like, they can just open their doors and they don't have to wait for anyone from the government to say, yes, you're good.
Yeah, they have to do the risk assessment and they have to file it. And then once it's been filed, then they have to post it in their business, whether it's in their window or where it's visible for sure. And like I say, if there's complaints, then we'll be looking into them. Or if there's, we will be doing routine inspections as well. So there's two methods. But again, it's all reliant on the public. We can't do this alone. So if you do go into a business and you recognize that they're not social distancing or that they're not doing the hygiene in between clientele, then please let us know. Either call 811 or call Protect N.W.T and let us know, and we will definitely investigate.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Sidney. If Hillary, if your mic starts to work and you want to ask a question, just shoot me a text and we'll come back to you. So for now, though, we'll turn it over to Emily with Cabin Radio.
Hi. My question is, what is the status of PPE right now? I know you said that you're encouraging local manufacturers to make it, and I know some masks were recalled. So I'm just curious what's going on there.
Phase one allows people. Phase one doesn't mean the threat of COVID-19 is over. So people will. Thank you for putting your mute on. Yes, absolutely. So the PPE, we're working with a few different suppliers. We have our own suppliers that we've used before COVID-19 with the health department. We're working with the federal government. They're also trying to coordinate the PPE coming into the country. And we're also working with Alberta. I have to give a lot of credit to that jurisdiction. They, in spite of their own desperate need, they've actually worked with all of the jurisdictions. So there was one bad shipment that was received. It was caught very quickly. We'd sent it out and now we're recalling that. So we're working again diligently with our suppliers, with the federal government and other jurisdictions to make sure that we have the PPE that we need. We will be trying to make sure that quality control is looked at before we get the supplies here. And like you said, we're also looking at manufacturers in the north. So we have two manufacturers now that are going to be putting out the hand sanitizers, the alcohol-based sanitizer. We also have ITI has put out a call for anyone that's willing to sew masks, because a lot of the masks that will be needed do not need to be medical grade. They can be just the masks that you see people are making out of material. So there are programs within the government to support that as well. Again, anyone that's looking at sewing masks for profit or for friendships, get a hold of us. We have funding available to be able to help you with the supplies.
As a follow-up, can I ask, who are the few different suppliers that you're working with?
That's a great question, and a question I don't have off the top of my head, in all honesty. We can get that to you if you did need it.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Emily. We're going to turn it over now to Mo, Vista Radio.
Thank you. Can you hear me well?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Thank you. Good morning, and thank you for holding this. It's super useful and helps clarify a lot of stuff. So my question is, now the limit. I understand here in phase one, the limit has been the limit on outdoor gatherings has been pushed up to 25 or less. Correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
25 or less.
So what went into pushing that limit up to 25, and how do you know that won't kind of culminate in a surge of cases?
We don't, and that's why the restrictions are coming off in phases, and they're coming off slowly. We get a lot of feedback. People are saying, we're in a bubble, like there's nobody, we don't have COVID-19, open it up, let us go back to normal. The reality is that we're not in a bubble. People think that, but we have trucks coming every day, bringing in supply chain groceries, et cetera, that we need. They need to eat, they need to use bathrooms, they are using services. We also have people from the Northwest Territories that are going out of the territories. We are asking them to self-isolate when they come back, but although we do checkup, there's still an honor roll within that. So it only takes one incident. I hate to say it, we have people that are skipping the borders, people that might be illegal drug runs or bootleggers. Those things are happening. So at no point are we totally contained that we are 100% sure that we will not have COVID-19. So therefore, we'll open up slowly. If she starts it with 25 people at maximum outside, and we do have a spread, the contact list would be a lot less than if we had a huge party out at Sandpits, which when I was young, we used to do hundreds of youth. That would be impossible for us to do a contact list. So that is why the restrictions are lower when it's gone through 2 phases, that it won't, that we're not seeing any community spread. At that point, she'll look at loosening the restrictions again. But it's really important that we all play our part in this. It only takes one slip for us to look at community spread, and then we're in trouble, and then we're right back to containment. So I want everyone to enjoy their summer, but I want everyone to realize that we're not out of the woods, that we all have a part to play in this. Abide by the rules, abide by the orders, and call 811 or Protect N.W.T. if you think or you see people that aren't abiding by it, because, like I said, it only takes one slip. Thank you.
Mo, did you have a follow-up question to that?
Yes, I do. Yes, please. So my follow-up question is, so as you said, if anything happens, measures will be looked at again. I guess my question is, what can you tell to, the typical N.W.T. resident who heard back on Friday that the territory is in phase 1 of emerging wisely, and that things, at least from what we are hearing, things seem to be okay. But what if that person wants to go out, if that person wants to go see friends, wants to go camping, whatever, what do you tell that person when it comes to keeping a hold of the restrictions in place or the practices in place?
Well, what I tell everyone is that the plan is not emerge safely, it's not emerge quickly, it's not emerge now. It's called emerge wisely. And the reason that the word wisely is in there is because we're still at risk, a huge risk. So I need everyone to be wise within this. Like I said, enjoy your summer, enjoy visiting with people. However, abide by the social distancing, wear your mask. I went to the grocery store yesterday, actually, and it was disheartening when I seen that myself, and I seen one other woman in the whole store that were wearing masks. The masks aren't to protect you. The masks are to protect others. They're to protect our neighbors, those that we love. It is a bit disheartening when I go out and I'm not seeing people do that. So it tells me that people are getting too comfortable. Don't get too comfortable. Enjoy your summer, but never forget that risk is right outside our door, and it's only us that can stop that. And again, wear your mask, keep your social distancing, abide by the orders, and report if other people aren't. Thank you.
Thank you, Premier. Let's turn it now to Arthur with CKLB.
Good morning, Premier. I have 2 questions. One of them is, how many KN95 masks were distributed in the N.W.T. and how many need to be recovered in the Health Canada recall? And then the second question is that now that we're in phase 1 of the Emerging Wisely plan, when can we expect to see the GNWT's economic recovery plan take effect?
Mm-hmm. Okay. I got to write them all down or I'll forget one. So how many of the K95 masks were distributed? That I don't know. We can get that information to you. The ones that were covered in recall, my understanding is that we had enough PPE to last us, I think it was 3 weeks. Again, we'll get that back to you. At any point, though, we have PPE for 3 weeks. However, if we are hit with community spread, that does put a different damper. Some jurisdictions are going day to day. They only have enough PPE for a couple of days. But so far, we've all managed to support each other across jurisdictions. Again, this is an effort that we're doing, all premiers across Canada. So we've made an agreement, premiers, that if one jurisdiction is really desperate in need, for example, Quebec right now, then we would support them in getting as much as they need. And then if we get into a position where we're in great need, that they would be reciprocated. So at this point, we're fine. If we do get community spread, we would be put at a higher list for distribution of PPE, but we're not concerned at this point that we will run out in the short term. Oh, sorry. And then you had other questions. You also asked about the Emerge Wisely and the economic and recovery. It's an economic and social recovery plan. So the Emerge Wisely is about the health, lessening the restrictions, but we have to also look at not only our economic. A lot of people are losing, closing their doors. They're stressed out. Employees are not working, and the social impacts that's having, the mental health on people, the homelessness that we had to deal with, etc. So all those are being brought to the forefront. We're in the process now of bringing together a business advisory committee, an Indigenous component, still trying to figure out what that'll look like, because of course all Indigenous governments all want to be at the table, and I respect that, and all want them all there. And then the social sector, the NGO. So that'll be ongoing once we form those groups. They're all at this point starting to form. So there'll be two components. One will be the long-term economic and social recovery. What will our new norm look like 6 months, 9 months, and a year from now? But also, they're going to be crammed. In the first month, they're going to be asked to meet at least 10 times, because we need to know now. We've sent out a survey that said, how is it impacting your businesses? I believe the Chamber of Commerce is also doing some work around that. So we're compiling the impacts now, but we need to be able to have an answer within the next couple of weeks so that we can ask our federal government, say this is what we need for the North, and so that we can also guide our own relief packages from the territorial government. So far, we've given some packages. We've helped with income support. We've helped with childcare. We've helped with our minimum wage, but we want to plan. We want to make sure that we're doing it based on the knowledge that we have, not just based on the cries that we hear. So that's the work that we're doing now. So thank you.
Arthur, to your question about the number of masks, we actually have that request in right now. We're just trying to get that information from the department, so I'll be happy to share that with you once we have it.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I'm going to turn it now actually over to Northern News Services. I believe we have Blair on the line. Did he make it on? Okay, let's turn it. I see we have Mario, Radio Canada. We'll turn it over to you.
Hi, thank you. Good morning, Premier. Sorry about not muting my phone earlier, or my laptop. Anyways, kind of like going back on the last question, what have you been asking from the feds so far from Ottawa? Like, I guess, what's your main ongoing request that we're still waiting for?
So the main ongoing request that I asked for, and I have to say that my colleagues, Premier Silver from the Yukon and also Nunavut, have been really adamant about saying, please don't do it per capita. We've been saying that for decades and decades, but if they're giving out all the relief packages per capita, we're going to be shortchanged in the Northwest Territories. So we've been asking for that. We've also been asking for severe flexibility. A lot of the and we're so grateful for the relief packages that have been coming from the federal government. However, they're not meeting the needs of all of our businesses. So we've been asking for the relief packages to come, that they be flexible. We've gone to them and said, help our tourism industry, help our airlines, help our mines, help our people. But again, what they're not hearing, and they've been trying, but they're not hearing that we have different needs, different business situations in the North. And so we would like to have flexibility to be able to direct the money that they're providing so that we can use it to the needs of the businesses here. For example, they gave the $5 million through Cannor. We were so grateful for that, but a lot of businesses fell through the gaps in that one, I heard. So they just gave another $30-some million, and the first thing I did as soon as I heard about it was call the Prime Minister. I was on a call with him and said, please give us flexibility within that. Don't make it so stringent that our businesses fall through the gaps. So I guess the biggest thing for me with the federal government is don't do it per capita, because we have great needs. We started with an opportunity gap. We were behind the starting point to start with. So now we're really behind, and also give us the flexibility to use it as we want. That's my biggest ask. Thank you.
But so far from what we got, as any, like, what indications do you have that things are being done by capita or were done? I from the numbers that we got, I don't think it was. But yeah, I guess so. What's the message that you're getting back in return? We're not seeing per capita for now.
We're not saying per capita for now. So they've been very generous, and they gave us the money, the first money they gave to the North, all 3 territories, and then they gave an extra $30-some million just the other day to the territories. So far we haven't been hit per capita. We also have the buy-in from other premiers. That was critical. Because it's one thing for the 3 territories to say don't fund per capita, but we also had to have the buy-in from the other jurisdictions, because if they said that's not fair, then we were fighting a lost cause. So it's been really about building relationships right across Canada, making sure that the jurisdictions, other premiers and other provinces understand our needs in the North, and getting them behind as well to support us. And they have done that. I have to give credit to all the premiers. All of us have stood together, and they have said that the North is special and to help us as well. So far, we haven't gotten hit with the per capita. We've been lucky. But it is something that all 3 premiers will constantly be at the table and asking for as we move forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Mario. We're going to turn it over to, I think Blair has got his mic working at Northern News Services, so we'll give him another shot there. No, maybe not. Okay, do we have Thomas Radio Taiga on the line?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you. And good morning, Premier. My question is about the opening next week of the Legislative Assembly. It's among other things mainly to discuss and adopt the budget. Would you have a few words about what should be discussed at this moment? Do you have any idea of what the debates should be about?
Well, I know that for Cabinet side, the most important thing, and I think for MLAs as well, is we need to pass the budget. We had a temporary budget that was put in place because COVID-19 hit us, but that's not giving us for the end of the year. So I do know that that'll be a big topic coming up through it. I also know that many of the MLAs, and so each department will be given an update on COVID-19, on what we've done individually in departments and the impact that that's had. So I'm not sure if other things will come up. Perhaps the mandate might come up, would be my guess. We're just doing on our side, we're doing an analysis of the mandate that was brought in for the first, when we first began this government, and to seeing where we stand with it and what we can still accomplish. So, but I think the big priority with this city will be to pass that budget. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. In another subject, totally. Last week, MLA of the Hair River, Rocky Simpson, expressed concerns about the security at the borders. The government moved the checkpoint from Enterprise to the border. Is there anything else that have been done to maybe to improve the security, to make sure that the rules are enforced at the border?
Basically, moving the checkpoint right to the border actually helped a lot, because we had the park. So people were coming out and going by the border check to be able to go to the park and then coming in. It's really easy to say when you're not right at the border to say, I'm going to the park, and then actually go to high level or whatever you may want to be. So actually having it right at the border means that we're actually more sure that residents aren't going out of the territories, and if they are, that they are going into isolation. It also limits people from the south that were coming up and enjoying our parks as well, but it's the idea is that they're not supposed to be here. We couldn't set it up right away, and in fairness to the staff, so some people always say security of people versus security of staff, but we have an obligation to make sure that everyone was safe. So we used the visitors center that is at the border, and we also had to bring in another unit, a trailer, for people to be able to stay in so that we had enough coverage for the shifts. So now that that's in place, again, I don't want people to assume that the borders are 100% safe. Those borders are not 100% safe. There may be people that are sneaking through the bush in the evenings. There are people that are saying that they're going to do things and not. So again, it all goes back to the public. If you see people that you know have been new to the territories or have been outside of the territory and they're not self-isolating, let us know. We will investigate. I also want to give kudos to the public because we've had a phenomenal amount of people, over 600 people that have called and reported, and we've investigated each one. So way better to be safe than sorry. I will never give heck to the public for phoning too much, but because we need you. We need each of us in this. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, let's turn now. I believe, technically Sidney asked a question for Hillary, so we'll give Sidney an opportunity to ask a question.
Hi, thanks. Yeah, I was wondering if you could tell us your assessment of compliance over the May long weekend, which was the first weekend with some eased restrictions.
Yeah, thank you. I was a bit worried about the May long weekend, of course, because it was long weekend. First, everybody knows that the May long weekend, everybody goes camping. It's the first time that families tend to go out and spend time together. The reality was in Yellowknife, and I think in many other places, it was a bit chilly this May long weekend. In fact, it's warmer today than it was on any of the days that I had off. So within that, we didn't have as many complaints. I watched every day. I was watching my emails. I had direction to, because I'm also municipal and community affairs, to phone me if there was an incident. So my understanding as of this morning was that there was no significant incidences that people had to be severely addressed. Well done, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks. And just as a follow-up to that, I guess, is there any particular area that your government is most worried about as far as compliance goes?
I think for me, the biggest thing is losing those contacts. So I know that, again, with the orders to allow people into your home, even around having people outside, is about having those family connections or friendship bubbles. My biggest fear is that people will forget that, many of our younger people, and might open that up too wide. The wider that you open up your friendship unit into your home, the more trouble we will have with contact tracing if community spread does hit us in the north, or when it does hit us in the north. So again, the biggest thing is for me is making sure your homes are your sanctuary, but they're also a place that can actually spread the COVID-19 very quickly if you're not careful. So again, keep those units tight, keep them close. But the larger you make your friendship units, is the harder it is for us to trace them, and the more risk to all of our residents in the north. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Premier. Okay, so we have a written question. Blair can't get his mic working, so we're just he emailed us in one. He's just asking if you know whether or not the Northwest Territories will begin using the gene expert tests. We know they've been validated for use in Nunavut, but not here. And do you know why?
I'm sorry, I can't answer that question. That would be more of a question for the health minister or the chief public health officer, actually. So at that, we would have to get back to you on that. I'm not even going to guess.
And for Blair, if you can hear us, that's always a good question for our weekly media briefings with the technical experts. So those ones Wednesday afternoons, and you guys can ask those questions there. So I think we've been able to answer everyone's questions this morning. Thank you, Premier. I know you got to get going, and thank you to media for calling in, and for those watching at home. Premier Cochrane will do her best to ensure there's a weekly media briefing, and we encourage you to ask as many questions as you'd like. And of course, we'll always find other ways to make sure the information is out there. So thank you again, Premier and media, and everyone have a lovely day.
And thank you to everyone, and thank you to all residents. Remember, abide by the orders. They're there to protect all of us. Thank you for doing your part. Take care.